I'd have every type of Coast Guard asset flying over that thing, a C-130, a H-144. I'd have, the Dolphin and the Jayhawk.
Yes.
I might not be in the same stadium and I might not be wearing the same jerseys, but I've seen these guys on the opposite sideline.
There is no ceiling for Adam Mumme. There's no ceiling. That's all I really have to say about this kid.
Hello, welcome back to Division I Rejects. I'm your host, Kobe Manzo. This is D1R 208. We've got a hell of an episode for you. I'm very excited about this week's version of the pod edition, if you so call it. Joining me tonight, our guests on the show, Coach Hudson Dunaway from the Coast Guard Academy. We posted about it earlier on. They're playing in Fenway Park for the Secretary's Cup later on in November, a big-time D3 football matchup that you should all tune into. But we've got more than just that. On tonight's episode of the podcast, Drew and I go through the GAC, the Great American Conference at the D2 level, and give you a 2025 preview breakdown of all the teams inside of that conference to let you know what you need to, I guess, kind of tune up on in terms of the 2025 season. But on the D3 level, we've got a big-time college football name coming to a D3 football staff, a guy who is really widely known as the inventor of the air raid offense. Fast forward to that part of the video if you want to figure that out. There will be timestamps at the bottom of the video or in the description if you're listening on other platforms. On the NAIA scene, we've got a sprint football team making the jump to NAIA. That's a very interesting move that we'll talk about. And a new site for the NAIA championship game that'll be switching in 2025. Finally, Jimmy and I will break down some of the top quarterbacks you need to know in D3 football heading into the 2025 season. It's not a ranking by any means. It's just some guys that we feel are absolute dogs, and we would be remiss if we do not talk about them. There's some reasons you should watch college football on Saturday. So, with all that being said, I'm very excited about this episode. Unfortunately, I do have some very unfortunate news to share, and you guys have probably seen it if you follow us on social media. In terms of the D3 football community, there was a loss that I truly am going to try to, but unfortunately will always be unable to put it into words. That being the loss of Kellyanne Lytle, the daughter of D3 Trinity University offensive coordinator Wade Lytle, following the floods at Camp Mystic in Texas, a national tragedy that I'm sure you've seen across all different news outlets. This, of course, hitting very close to home for those Trinity players, coaching staff, and community as they lost one of their own down there. This is the graphic posted by Texas Football Life. Some other great messages have been shared by other contributors in the D3 football space. She was found after the floods, tragically did not survive. Of course, our thoughts and prayers with the whole Trinity family and the Lytle family during this time. And I bring this up, one, to shine light on the situation, but more importantly, for us and others to help contribute to her legacy and the legacy of the Lytles. They've established the Kellyanne Elizabeth Lytle Memorial Foundation to give back to the community and charitable causes that were dear to her. And so a very special deal. The link to donate to her foundation will be linked in the description of this video on whatever platform. Make sure that if you are willing and able to help support that cause, I certainly will be doing so. And once again, my thoughts, prayers, condolences with the Lytle family and the whole Trinity University coaching staff, players, the community down there. Once again, there's no way to put this into words. All I can do is hope that helping speak about it and hopefully direct people towards that can make some kind of impact and positively benefit her legacy that she's leaving down there. So once again, definitely want to make sure I start with that. It's a very important piece to me and others inside of this community, and we can continue with the episode. But once again, if you are willing and able to contribute toward that cause, I would highly recommend you do so. So let's continue into this episode with our guest conversation on D1R 208. Joining the show tonight, O-lineman turned wide receiver coach to the U.S. Coast Guard Academy, a man whose feet will grace the turf at Fenway Park this fall when the Bears play in the annual Secretary's Cup game, Coach Hudson Dunaway. Coach, what's going on, man?
Hey, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking about the Secretary's Cup and Coast Guard football. Let's not hold the O-lineman phrase too close. That was a past life, a lot of pounds ago, but I still love the big uglies up front. We call them the Grizz. They're my guys still. So
I love that for you. I love that for the fellas. But of course, before we get into anything else, O-line coach to O-lineman, in the playing days to now wide receiver coach. That feels, damn near sacrilegious.
I like to think that my receivers are going to just block really well.
Okay.
But really what it turned into was I actually got recruited as an offensive lineman, and because of our summer program, I lost so much weight that I played tight end my freshman year, and then my sophomore year I had gained enough weight back to move back inside to the
That's awesome.
in the trenches. But so I played 3 more years O line, and then how the military works, they say, hey, you got to look good in the uniform, so get rid of some of those pounds, and so I did it, and now I look more the part. And when people ask me, recruits ask me, "Oh, you played O line?" They're like, "What? Were you a 225
Yeah.
pound guard?" I was like, "Nope, I was about
Yeah.
280,
Was it sprint
285."
football, right? You ever
Yeah,
gotten that one before?
exactly. Yeah. Believe me, I didn't sprint much. I'll tell you that right now. So,
That's good.
yeah.
I like that, man. And to get, I guess, right into the meat and potatoes of it, the announcement comes back in November, right? This isn't new news necessarily, but as we ramp up towards the season, of course, we put out the graphic the other day, and you and I got in touch. This is something that has been on my radar, but I wanted to really dive into it, right? The Coast Guard, the Merchant Marine Academies, they're facing off in Fenway Park. That in itself, the headline alone is going to sell tickets, right? But give me the initial impressions from you and the guys and what fans can expect from what I have to imagine is going to be a pretty incredible atmosphere and game day experience.
So I had a bit of a back pocket intel on it before
Okay.
even some of the Coast Guard folks did. I worked in the athletics department a little last summer. I'm an active duty officer, so when I wasn't teaching, I got detailed out to the athletics department, and our AD said, "Hey, we have these really nascent talks about playing in the Fenway Park for the Secretary's Cup," and I was like, "Oh, okay." That's a change from Cadet Memorial Field. So we went up there in August of last year, about a year ago now, actually,
Okay.
and had a good walkthrough with them. And the Fenway group has been unbelievable. They are rolling out the red carpet for us, and it's going to feel like a big time college football game. And I think maritime industry is all in on it. Coast Guard headquarters is starting to pick it up and run with it. And I know that our Boston, now it used to be District 1. About a week ago, it got changed to District Northeast. Their planning shops running with it, and I mean I'm excited to see the final product because I just keep hearing things about what might be between the uniforms and the sponsorships and things like that. I'm just excited to go out there and try to beat Kings Point for a second year in a row. That's what makes me most excited, because I try to tell the guys all the time, you get them once and let's go get them again. Let's go get them again. Let's go get them again. So that's the most exciting part for me. And it also comes with the territory of being a coach. We got to get these guys ready to play like September 6th. Like we don't want to be, 0 for going into that game. So if you let something like that creep up on you, next thing you know,
Yes.
And I don't want to throw any shade to my father, but he played at Navy, and his senior year at Navy, they were 0 for going into Army, but they managed to win that one. So the season was salvaged. I just don't want to be in that position. So
absolutely not, man. And you talk from that experience, you guys win it very recently. You've got experience winning the Secretary's Cup too, your final year on the roster. From what I could tell, you guys go and take that one. The years prior, not so much of a favorable result for the Coast Guard up there and the Bears, but you finish out and you close out on that note. That's got to be a feeling that you constantly chase after the fact.
Absolutely. And I think I tell my guys that too much, and I'm glad they got that monkey off their back, because I was telling them all the time, they were so tired of hearing, "Oh, well, coach said last time they beat him was when he was a senior. Last time they beat him and so I think they've got over that. And so now they don't understand is I'll just get on the next thing and I'll say, guys, our last winning season, class of 2018 fall season, 7-3. Yeah. So now I have that to use on them. But I love motivating these guys, and I love the rivalry in and of itself. And I got to play in it with my brother. I got to play, I got to watch it before I was even a cadet because he's older than me. I got to see it as an alumni, and now I'm in it as a coach. And it's a really cool rivalry that I hope people will tune into and check out, because it's worth it.
And that's what we were saying. Like, is there a more qualified person to talk about this than the guy who has lived and breathed it and has seen it in so many different capacities? You kind of mentioned right there. And kind of like you said, the game has been split the last couple of years and maybe turned a little bit more to one side than the other. But how do you describe the buildup on a quote unquote, air quote, regular yearly basis to now what you expect going into this fall? How do you describe that buildup in the game day atmosphere and environment to someone like me who hasn't had the chance to catch one in person?
So I'm going to speak to it when we played it at Coast Guard the first time it was on ESPN in 2017. So that was my junior year. Our stadium is about a capacity 5,000, 5,500. We had 3 rows deep on the retaining wall and the sideline fences, end zone fences. And it was the first time it was on ESPN. We had the camera mounts everywhere. So we had the lifts in the end zones, and we had some platforms. And it is a very well attended, well respected game. The pageantry is pretty cool for Division III, and where we play at Coast Guard, we have a beautiful stadium. It's right on a river, and I think the time we played them at our place, a submarine was actually going through the river with a Navy escort at the same time. So there was a lot of cool military stuff going on at the same time, and the ESPN crew, they ask for the game every year because they love doing it so much, and
That's so sweet.
And the game itself is just so cool, to the march on, the flyovers. We do well at home all year. We tell people most of the time we do pretty well at home because the first quarter, at least, if there's a flyover, we're kicking off, and the other team's like, "Whoa, where are we? What are we getting into?" So we usually have a good first quarter, and we try to ride that into the second. It doesn't always work, but we like where we play is awesome, and when that game is at our place, we love it. We love having it there, but we're excited to go take it on a bigger stage for sure.
That's like taking Set the Tone to a whole nother level, right? With the flyover and that just dramatic impact of, the weight of that is really sweet. And of course, the blueprint for something like this has been laid not so long ago. Ithaca, Cortland, they play their 2022 Cortica Jug game in Yankee Stadium. I actually had the chance to be in their previous game in MetLife. That was an incredible atmosphere. I was there in a recruit capacity on the field. I didn't get to see the one in Yankee Stadium, but that atmosphere looked incredible. I have to imagine that played into this idea.
I would say we definitely just love the brand of the U.S. Coast Guard, and we played off of, and our coach is a Cortland grad, so he knows everything about it. Our former head coach is an Ithaca grad, so Cortica comes up a lot.
That's awesome.
I think the blueprint from out in Wisconsin with the Target Field games, the Tommy Johnny game, back a decade ago, I think it now was, but. Rest in peace to that rivalry, which was unbelievable.
Right.
I wish we could get it back, but I think we really just wanted to put the Coast Guard brand from a national standpoint, not just from the academy side, but just from the enlisted side and what we are as a service on display for everybody. Because I really do think the more people see it and get to know it, they'll understand just how special it is to be in the Coast Guard. And what better way to do that than, the oldest ballpark in America with, a huge rivalry game. So I definitely think we took something from our New York counterparts, and the Bostonians would love to say that, they did it better because that's just how they operate up in Boston and New York. But it is what it is. Yep. And I'm excited to be doing it.
That's how you got to go and one-up them, right? That's the mindset. Maybe not from y'all, but from the event operations standpoint. How many questions, though, have you gotten already in, I'll paraphrase, how the hell are they going to play the football game? For people who don't know about these previous events, how the hell are you going to play a football game instead of a baseball park? How many times does that come up?
So a lot of people do ask because thankfully there is a kind of a blueprint for them because they have the Fenway Bowl, and they've hosted Harvard Yale played there a couple years back. I think Maine and UMass played there one time as well. But the most unique part is sharing a sideline. That's the biggest piece of it. I know Fenway has their own external reasons why they love to host football from a field management standpoint, because they move the mound, and I think they get a much better deal when the football's done, is they get to replace the whole field, something along those lines. But
really.
I think they really enjoy having football there, but it is tight. We'll come out of the home dugout, if you will, and we'll share a sideline. Awesome. And there's talks of trying to put some Coast Guard assets behind the sidelines. A Kings Point asset of some kind, a small boat. I'm not sure what they have in their repertoire for toys, if you will, but
to say it lightly, yes.
Yeah, I don't really know. I'm not a Merchant Mariner, so I can't tell you.
Very fair.
But I think the most unique thing is sharing a sideline, and then the game day ops for a staff of 5 versus a staff of 40 is very different. So, I'm not. We have 4 paid coaches, and then we have a lot of awesome volunteers. So we're really just hoping to get in there and play a solid, sound football game and answer the questions before they get asked, I guess is the best way to put it.
100%, 100%. And again, some of this may very much still be TBD, but you talked about the flyover earlier on. I have to imagine we're bringing out everything we can prior to kickoff. Is there anything you can share about that?
I mean, that's up to the people who run the airspace. If it were up to me, I'd have every type of Coast Guard asset flying over that thing, a C-130, an H-144. I'd have, the Dolphin and the Jayhawk.
Yes.
And I'd even have, the Commandant has a plane. I'd have that thing fly over, even though he's going to be in the stands. But we're going to put a couple cutters in the Boston area. We're going to have some black hulls and some white hulls, I would imagine. Our white hulls are more our law enforcement ships. Our black hulls are our buoy tenders. That's where my heart's at because I was on 2 buoy tenders as a first couple tours. So
That's awesome.
I love seeing the buoy tenders. They're the O-linemen of the Coast Guard. So I have a soft spot for them.
I like that a lot. That's pretty good. And I guess to close it off, man, what do people need to know football-wise about this Coast Guard squad going into 2025 that maybe haven't been following along with you guys?
I think if you're a Service Academy football nut, we're really interesting because we are not a triple option team. We are probably as far from it as you can get besides being an air raid team. But we do run the ball effectively. We have a great offensive line coach. He's our offensive coordinator. I love working for him. We have just a group of guys that they actually are living and breathing Service Academy football in a way that the other 3 services right now, Army, Navy, and Air Force at that level, they're so football oriented now that they're not doing what our guys are doing. And that's waking up and, going to class right up until 4. And then they only get about an hour and a half to practice. And then they're hitting the books after they eat dinner. So I think just watching us and how we're able to move the ball offensively and how we're able to be different than the other academies, because we are different from the other academies in the best ways possible. I think that's just something. If you're a football fan, it's just fun to see a Service Academy not running fullback belly, fullback lead, and quarterback follow. As much as I grew up on it, I love what we do now, and the proof is in the pudding. Offensively, we've been very, very sound the last 3 years. We need to get better on defense, and we're doing everything we can to just be as solid as possible going into that week 1 game, because it's going to be a really fun year. It's a little bittersweet, probably my last one back in my alma mater for a little bit. So I'm wanting it all to slow down already. So
I hear you, man. And as soon as that, August, September roll around, it'll be anything but, right? You're going to be flying through this thing. And that's an exciting deal. Different in all the best ways. I think it's a very great way to describe it for someone maybe on the outside like myself. And talk about it's the epitome of balance, right? At the D3 level. That's the epitome of balance and making these guys incredibly well-rounded. But thank you, Coach. That's all I got for you, man. I'm really excited about this. I was already excited. I'm even more pumped now about the prospect of this. This is going to be something that I think we can hopefully get a lot of eyes on. I know both the respective academies will have some great turnout for something like this.
Absolutely. And I'm going to take my platform here and just make a blanket announcement. If you are a high school coach listening to this, if you are a college player listening to this, or a high school player, and you are looking for a completely free education, just like the other service academies, Army, Navy, Air Force, and you want to get paid while you're in college, and you want to have the opportunity to serve your country and save people's lives, be the reason that someone gets to go home to their family at night, you are doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing this country a disservice if you are not looking into the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. It is a wonderful institution where we train leaders, just like Jeff Monken always says. Army is the premier leadership institution in the United States. We're the premier life-saving institution in the United States. And we like to say we're your U.S. Coast Guard Academy because our goal is to serve you. And so if you're a high school coach or a high school player and you have a heart for service and you want to play competitive college football, please give all your options an opportunity, no matter where you are in the country, because this is an amazing atmosphere. It's an amazing walk of life. And the brotherhood you make there, and then in the fleet as well, you get to serve alongside those same guys you're fighting with every weekend. So I can't say enough about the place, and I love it. I'll miss it. And I always just want to say, go Coast Guard, beat Kings Point.
You're the man. Incredibly, incredibly well said, Coach. You're the absolute man. I appreciate you for taking some time tonight, and definitely looking forward to seeing this Bear squad this fall, man.
Thanks very much.
Absolutely. See you. Tonight on the pod, it's another night of a conference preview. Tonight, we're going down to the Great American Conference, a conference that has a really talented top echelon and top tier of the conference. The depth of the conference is something we're going to talk about a lot tonight. Joining me tonight, Drew Carpenter. What's up, fella?
How you doing, Kobe? It's great to have another week to go over some good football teams.
Hell yeah, it is, my friend. And who else to get started with tonight than the team that I think historically has been on the top of this conference, the Harding Bisons. We got a couple Bison to talk about tonight. The Harding Bisons, though, the ones that I think the national stage has been introduced to over the last couple of years, obviously, national championship in 2023, very much still as a national contender as long as Paul Simmons is leading the charge. He's led this team since 2017, and in that time, Drew, 77-14 overall record for Simmons at the helm of this program, and it gets better from there. He is the fastest coach in Harding history to 50 wins, and he gave us probably one of the best quotes of that 2023 season going through that playoff run. A lot of people question the offense from this Harding squad. He responds just how you think he would. He says, quote, "Running the flex bone is pretty good if you care about winning." That was after the 55-14 win over Lenore Ryan in what I believe was the national semifinal, quarter or semifinal. And I think that summarizes Harding and the identity that the guys have over there in Searcy, Arkansas very, very well. When you look at this team, you look at the transfer portal. Again, all of our information and data from the transfer portal, courtesy of Athlink. They do a great job of compiling all this data for us so we can go through and find some of these information. This shows 17 players at one point or another in the portal. Few starters on the defensive side of the ball, especially going to be leaving for the Bisons this fall. What they're bringing in, though, this one was kind of an interesting back and forth. Marcus Hansen, he's the former NSIC Defensive Player of the Year from Bemidji State. Following 24 season, he transfers out of Bemidji. That was pretty big news in the D2 landscape. We find out he's going to Harding, can potentially be a force for this Bison's defense. Back in June, though, that was when the announcement came out. Now, he's back in the Northern Sun. He just committed to play at Minnesota State. So not sure what happened in the meantime there, why he's out at Harding, not going to be a part of that defensive attack. They've got 5 D1 bounce backs coming to Searcy after not seeing much time at their previous schools like Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, just being a couple of those. So some in-state guys taking that opportunity. And then I think it kind of highlights this incoming class as well. Former all-conference NAIA defensive back coming in from Roosevelt, Joey Mahop, who was the first player in Lakers history to be named an NAIA All-American back in 2023. So definitely addressing the defensive side of the ball. It's going to be one of their biggest concerns for this Bison's team. But going into the 2025 season, talking about this squad that is very closely removed from the national stage and national contention, you talk about the offense, and I kind of hinted at it earlier with the flex bone. The way that they run their offense has been the talk of a lot of different outlets. They bring back a lot of production in that room. The top 2 backs return to deal some damage out of the flex bone. It's Andrew Miller, Braden Jay. Those 2 have combined to do a lot of damage for this Harding team. 2,000 yards and almost 30 touchdowns a year ago just between the 2 of those guys. And these guys are a great combination of, obviously, in the flex bone, the triple option style of offense. You're not going to be hitting a home run every time. These guys, Braden Jay especially, home run hitter. A guy out of the backfield that can make something out of nothing. And then you look, of course, at the quarterback for this team, too, a pivotal part of that triple option attack. He's back under center. Cole Keeline, who we had a chance to have on the show way back when, it feels like. And that all bodes very well for this Bison squad. Dre Hall is a big loss out of the pass rush portion of this defense, along with that defensive lineman Gage Price. But leading tackler Clark Griffin, he's back to lead that unit defensively. Was a big mainstay of that piece in 2024. And the second team All-American last year, D2Football.com Elite 100. He had 110 tackles last season for this squad. So safe to say he'll be a difference maker coming back. But tell me about give me their best competition going into this upcoming year, Drew.
Yeah, I think Harding, obviously, you're going to get everybody's best shot, especially when you have been so successful. And another thing, Kobe, just to touch on that offense real quick. You know, Navy and Army, they run a lot of triple option as well, and they do that to deceive people because they might not be the most talented teams in D1. But when you're one of the most talented teams in D2 and you're able to run that style offense, good luck.
Yeah.
But let's move next to the Ouachita Baptist Tigers. Another strong year for the Tigers. They capped off a massive win. They did beat that Harding team, proving that they can hang with the best teams in the country. However, their season ended in an overtime loss to Central Oklahoma. But Washita is not looking to necessarily like, oh, we just lost a little heartbreaker. We're gonna have to rebuild and go to the drawing board. They're here to stay. They want to let everyone know that they do lose a couple of key guys, such as all conference kickers are people too. Tom Weston.
Hell yeah.
They lose quarterback Eli Livingston, who we posted last year when he caught what was it, the trick play to win against Harding,
trick play. I think that gave them the lead, I want to say, in that Harding game, which was kind of a back and forth slugfest.
Absolutely. And then you lose two key guys as well. A guy that can pound the rock and Kendall Givens, and a guy that's a leader, a stopper, and Dawson Miller linebacker. So losing quarterback and two key guys on offense obviously isn't great, but there's a couple guys that you can bring in to replace that. A couple questions I would just look at is just like losing your starting quarterback. Like where do you go from there? Okay, obviously that's a huge factor. I think in any offense, whether it's college, NFL, whatever. So obviously that's a huge thing. And then how do you respond after a heartbreaking loss? You're inches away from a deep postseason run potentially. You'd beaten the number one team in the country. How do you come back from that? We've seen multiple teams, whether it be NFL or college football, high college football, or just D2 teams, where it's like they're so close, they have a heartbreaking loss, and then the next year they just don't have that same fuel to the fire. So I do believe Washita's capable of it. So definitely seeing where that is. And then as far as a couple guys that could come back and really help them out, I would look at Nate Tenbarge. He got some time last year, couple games. I believe it was roughly 8 games that he was playing last year. So look to him to potentially step into that role left by Eli. And then lastly, defensive back Steven Weston, returning playmaker in the secondary, and they need a leader. Not saying they don't have anybody, but when you lose a guy like Dawson Miller, it doesn't matter what position group it comes from. You need a guy that's going to step up and be a dog, and that could be that guy.
100%, man. I think someone also worth mentioning, you talk about this squad and I think recent success with this team. When you look on the other side of the ball, man, Josiah Johnson, the Cliff Harris Award winner from last year at the Division II level, a guy that was another mainstay for this defense. You have to go out and, again, we always talk about you can't just replace these guys. You don't go out and replace that. But what you can try and do is to pull a money ball on you. What did they say? Try and replace them in the aggregate.
Yeah, I think if you're going to put it in Moneyball, right, you got to replace them with potentially multiple guys, right?
Got to.
And at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with that. Last time I checked, Usain Bolt ran by himself, but football players and football teams are built with 11 guys on the field at one time. So at the end of the day, you're going to have multiple guys that are going to need to step up to replace somebody. That's the nature of the game. So
I like that. I like that a lot, dude. Let's go and shift over. Then another team that I think really is poised to be at the top of this conference coming into this year. They've proven it the last 2 years, that being Southern Arkansas, the Mule Riders. Under Brady Smiley, his third year at the helm, it went pretty damn well. The last 2 years have been a roller coaster and a very good one at that for this SAU team. They have tied the program record for most wins in back-to-back years. That goes back to 1952. For this program. It's been a long time coming, I think is a very easy way of saying it for this squad to show that they're back at what really could be the peak of where their program is right now. Now, with that being said, this is the current peak. Does that mean they can't go out and reset the peak and reset the standard for this program this coming year? Absolutely not. What I am going to tell you, though, as I go through some of this breakdown of this, a lot of question marks around this team going into 2025, and not necessarily because of the transfer portal. I think that's the first thing that jumps out about this squad. The transfer portal has not bitten this team as it has others in the conference, as it has others across the country. According to Athlink, we see only 2 reported transfers leaving SAU. That's a number that in today's day and age is unparalleled. That's something that you do not typically see right about now. On the addition side, they bring in 4 FCS transfers, 2 offensive linemen, East Texas A&M, Central Arkansas, respectively. They get a tight end and a defensive lineman addition from Stephen F. Austin. And where it gets tough for this squad, 17 all GAC conference selections just a year ago. But this is where it starts to get interesting. Their conference player of the year, Judd Barton, not coming back in 2025 per their updated roster. That's a huge hit for them. A guy who can do it on the ground, through the air. Obviously, the accolades speak for themselves. An All-American, D2 football, Elite 100 type of guy. Defensive end, Hunter Hewitt, is definitely a man to watch. He needs to be a defensive force for that side of the football because you look on that side, what they lose is Dawson Scott. And that's one of the big questions going into this season. How do you generate pressure on the quarterback when you lose a guy like Dawson Scott, who was able to generate double-digit number sacks and probably way more than that pressures if you go back through and watch the tape on a guy like that? Also, offensive backfield, your top 3 rushers are gone. That's not something a lot of teams have to deal with. Unfortunately, they're in that boat. Who steps up in the offensive backfield for this Mule Rider squad? And then can they sustain this level of success, right? Is this a program that is a flash in the pan? We talked about it's been a while since they've had this level of success in back-to-back seasons. Can they maintain that? Can they turn it into 3, 4, 5 down the road, turn this into a Harding, into a Washita, into even a Henderson, these kind of squads that we've come to familiarize ourselves with in the top 25? I think they can. This is a prove-it year, though, for Coach Smiley and company down there, because can they do it without the star-studded lineup and roster they've had in years past? I do have a fun one for you here, though, Drew. The defense for this squad, they held their final opponent of the season last year, Northwest Oklahoma State, -2 passing yards in the last game of the year last year. That is just... That's like just downright demoralizing. I think they beat them also like 70-0 and set a conference record for points.
I don't know how defensively you can do that, to be completely honest with you.
That's incredible.
I think that's one of those mind-boggling stats to where that's almost like Russell Westbrook triple doubles. Like, will that ever happen again? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't understand how, with the amount of offense and explosion teams have in today's day and age, that's a credit to Coach Smiley.
And it wasn't a Harding team. It wasn't a triple option team. Even if it were, by the way, it'd still be incredibly impressive. But
absolutely, that's a credit to Coach Smiley in the program he's built. And obviously, like we had talked about, Kobe, they're looking to continue to grow.
Yeah, 100%. Another good one for you, though. Off the field, what they've been able to do. #1 in the nation for Division II football programs with their community service hours. 2,721 community service hours last year. Out of 162 D2 football programs, they finished first in the country when it came to community service. It certainly isn't going to necessarily bring you more wins in the fall, but that's something that you can hang your hat on as a coach, as a player, as anyone involved with this program, that you've got to be making some meaningful connections doing that kind of work in your community. And I say that's not going to bring you wins. What it definitely will bring is meaningful fans, meaningful connections, and kind of relationships inside of that community. You have to imagine that something like that will pay dividends for them moving forward, dude.
Who's tracking that? That's an interesting
That's a great question. I think that's on maybe a school by school basis, but I'm sure the NCAA has a record because they do compete. I know a lot of that is through the SAC, the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. They track a lot of those numbers as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely, congratulations. That's something that community service is something that's great, and obviously it gets something to where people want to come see you play because they know you, right? And so
3,000 hours.
Yeah, that's wild. Like that's
I want to know. I kind of want to know who led the charge on that, like player wise, like who had the most out of the guys. That'd be pretty cool.
Another credit to Coach Smiley. So let's touch on Henderson State, the Reddies, if I am correct.
Oh, yeah.
The Reddies.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Stay ready, ain't got to get ready, right? The model of consistency. Like the last 4 years, Henderson State very successful. They're putting up about 8 wins a season, sometimes 9, and it's like that's consistency. That's great. However, you see, Kobe, that they went 8-3 last year. All 3 of those were against ranked opponents in the national D2 tier that we had just talked about. So you got a strong returning core. The Reddies are going to try to look to, you win one of those games, you might get in playoff contention, right? We know how the Division II playoff works, where it's like if you go 9-2 with a ranked win, maybe a Harding or maybe a Washita State, you could be instantly in that playoff discussion. So I guarantee Henderson State's looking for that. Key returners, a couple of guys. Andrew Edwards, very, very experienced, very, very good as far as an overall quarterback. Jeremiah Davis, good running back. Caden Davis, tight end. That's another guy. And then a couple guys in defense I also want to touch on. Jordan Owens as well as Jacoby Shell. Kobe, this guy's Henderson State, a lot of guys returning, a lot of guys that have a ton of experience, and expect big things out of them.
Yeah. 100%. You look forward to, we usually talk a lot about the 2025 schedules and kind of these previews too. But what you'll notice, Drew, when you look through these schedules, there's no non-conference. I mean, the GAC is built so that every team is just playing each other. And
a lot of night
from
games.
What I can tell,
Look at those 2 a lot of night games.
What's that?
A lot of night games. Look at those first four. They're expecting.
Yes, dude. I noticed that as well. 6 and then a
Absolutely.
7, another 2 more 6 p.m. games to
Yeah.
start the year. That's actually pretty wild. Back to back to back to back.
That's how you get turned up right immediately. We all know, like, in college football, I feel like, especially like some teams, like Northwood didn't have lights. So like when you finally get to play those like night games, it's a different atmosphere.
Yeah. No, 100%. But you talked about a lot of those returners. They do. They have a ton of guys in place that feel like they should be ready to go. I mean, as early as obviously week 1. Nearly 70% of the roster from a year ago is back, Drew. And again, this is an 8-3 team we're talking about, and an offense that really lit up Division II. Caden Davis, you talked about him, D2 CCA, all-region, first-team honors. The offensive line is a big piece of that. They stay mostly intact. It's a little bit harder to track some of those statistics and numbers, but what you can tell is that unit has been very, very important for them. And this is something that, Coach Holes has brought a lot of stability right into this program away. He was promoted after 7 seasons as a defensive coordinator, so has worked his way up internally inside of this program. They signed 37 players in February, including 16 from Arkansas. It's the most in-state signees since 2021. A couple other statistics for you there. And that you kind of said the rest of it, man. I think it's a really good deal. Some of that information also courtesy of our friends at D2 College Football Spotlight on Twitter. They do a good job highlighting a bunch of these programs. But we kind of covered what I would call the top tier of the conference, right, when it comes to the GAC. Let's get into those other squads that certainly are going to try and be in the hunt, who can separate themselves this year. Let's talk about East Central. The way the Tigers are trying to separate themselves, not necessarily on the field. Before I talk about some of those additions they're making heading into 2025, what you need to know about this squad is the news that they broke very recently, Drew, concerning their locker room. I'm sure if you guys follow us on social media, you've already seen it, but these proposed upgrades to the ECU locker room down there are outrageous. Substantial gifts. They got the ball moving on what is now estimated to be a $2.3 million upgrade to this facility that features 140 lockers, individual LED screens for each athlete. You can kind of see they just have the logos on there right now, but that would have the individual player, the stats, position, those kind of things you'd imagine. Refreshed athletic training room. You see the hot and cold tubs right there. You've got the big TVs mounted, the pool tables, the ping pong, and then I think the equipment room as well is getting a bunch of upgrades as well. You look through these renders, dude, who at the D2 level competes with this level of facility? Grand Valley definitely jumps to mind right away. I know Delta State has a new locker room that was looking really solid. I mean, but off the top of your head, man, not many.
The way I see it is I know a podcast of people that enjoy going to do campus tours, and I'm sure that they would love to do this campus tour. And we can just go to the locker room and hang out in there and just play some college football, anything like that, and just forget the rest. Let's just hang out in there. That's awesome. I think that's something to where, like, in a way, we were all athletes first. We all understand that, like, if you have cool things, you're gonna attract cool people, right? Like, and when it comes to recruiting, that's a great recruiting tool. And as far as like being an athlete on the team already, there's something about it to where it's just like, okay, this is awesome. I'm comfortable. You talked about the tubs, and then you talked about also, like, I feel like as a college athlete, the locker room, like being one of those guys, like within the guys, people aren't going to want to leave there. They're going to want to hang out.
Yep.
So that's a cool spot.
People talk a lot about third place, what they call it, like home, work, or home and school, kind of being those two places. What's your third place? What's your place that you go to in between when you're not at either of those spots? And for a lot of guys that maybe are, whether they're commuters or guys off campus or, otherwise, you're not trying to go back and forth from the crib to the locker room, to the field, whatever that is, to class. You need somewhere to crash during the day between classes. Go into the locker room, get your treatment taken care of, go get your whatever needs sorted. But I will give them credit as well. I've been following along with their socials. It seems like they've got a really solid core group of guys that's bought into this summer conditioning and summer programming. That's huge. If you want to go take the next step in a conference like the GAC, you need to have guys bought in. Not in August and September. You need them bought in June and July. Those are the months for D2 football where the best teams separate themselves. Harding has been doing a very, very good job of that. They're some of the best in the country of keeping guys. The retention through the summers, that's what East Central is trying to emulate here. They do bring in 2 all-conference NAIA guys, wide receiver Zach Fuller, from Nelson University, and then DB Alon Woodbury out of Missouri Valley. 3 incoming transfers from the FCS level that all saw snaps at their previous institutions. These weren't guys that were riding pine at the last spot, Drew. They're coming in and they're going to make a difference right away.
Hey, we talk about it. We've talked about a couple of schools before that use the portal a lot. Nothing better to when it's like we're trying to win now, we're trying to improve now. Get guys that would like immediate snaps under their belt. You know, they've had that experience. They know how to take an install. They know what to look for in film. Little things like that.
100%.
Okay.
Tell me about the Wonder Boys, potentially the best name in sports.
The Wonder Boys. At first, when you hear it, you might think it's a band, but it is a football team. It's Arkansas Tech. Arkansas Tech this past 2 years, back-to-back 5 and 6 seasons. But it's one of those to where it's like, Kobe, I don't know, like for me at Northwood, we went 5 and 6 my last year there, and we could tell that like we were 2 plays away from being 6 and
Right. Yeah.
6 and 5. We're 2 plays away from being, or 3 plays away from being 7 and 4. So the Wonder Boys, absolutely, they're thinking that. I'm looking at 15 players to the portal. Okay, but you're bringing in 10 guys from the portal as well. So it's not necessarily a one-for-one type of thing. And obviously coaches don't look at it like that, like, oh, we lost an offensive lineman, we got to go get the same offensive lineman. They're looking for the best players.
Yeah.
But key returners for them, Deuce Wise. He was close to 1,000 yards rushing a year ago. Expect him to definitely like be explosive, physical runner, and a key part of that engine in the offense. And then Jiron Stewart, the linebacker, same thing. Very successful season last year. I believe it was 70-plus tackles a season ago. You and I both know whether it's high school, whether it's college, whatever it is, you're looking to always get 1% better. And if he gets 1% better, then expect him to get even more better on the field next year, right? 1% better every day. And I think that's what Arkansas Tech's definitely looking towards. But, you know, as someone who has had an experiment with a new coach coming into our locker room with Coach Buer coming in at Northwood, it's all about buy-in. And Roy Thompson's coming into his first year as a Wonder Boys head coach, had a great run as the Washita Baptist head coach. DC. Almost had me. But yeah, absolutely. Like when you got a guy and then they can tell from, hey, we played against this guy. We know he's good. We know he's successful. Boom. There's no necessarily like, oh, do we think he's got it? Do we think – but there has to be buy-in. And so I think that's a huge part of what's going to happen with the Wonder Boys.
Yeah, man, you talk about their head coach, and that's something that has been really the talking point for them coming into this season. And when you go back and look a little bit at the history of Roy Thompson Jr. here, you talked about it. His experience at Washita most recently, 2018 to 24, co-defensive coordinator. Before that, he was a 5-time GAC champion. I mean, this is a guy who's experienced a lot of success at the D2 level. Washita, under his watch, was really running for a large part the GAC during that time. 5 NCAA playoff appearances this guy has been a part of in that capacity. He knows how to get to that next level, and that's exactly what this Arkansas Tech team needs moving forward. His defense in 2024 was 5th in Division II in scoring. Drew, they only allowed 12 points per game. You have to imagine he's going to be very, very involved with the play calling on that side of the ball. They held Harding, the number 1 team in the country, to 13 points that year. You talked about it, 288 total yards. Talk about that Washita win. And they were the top 10, in the top 10, for D2 scoring defense in 2018, 19, 22, and 23. You talk about
Kobe,
flash in the pan. That's anything but. That is sustained success.
Kobe, in the way I see it, there, you know, a lot of schools, like for us, it was when Coach B came to Northwood, he hadn't played Findlay before. He hadn't played Saginaw Valley yet before. This guy's played the teams in the conference before. It's not like, hey, what do they run? What do they? I've seen it. He's seen it. He's been in that conference forever. And I think that's a huge factor and a huge part to be like, all right, now this can help me succeed, because I might not have the same players. I might not be in the same stadium, and I might not be wearing the same jerseys, but I've seen these guys on the opposite sideline. So I think that's a huge part.
He's been an architect of one of the best programs in recent history of that conference. Can he do it again? Can he repeat that, like you said, with a change of scenery? But to move things forward, let's stay in Arkansas. Arkansas Monticello, they're bringing in 6 different D1 bounce backs, Drew. They give the second chance opportunity kind of a new meaning to some of those guys that didn't see many snaps at the previous schools. They're losing what looks like it could be as many as 7 defensive starters from last year. That's a big blow for this squad, the Weevils. And the quarterback, their best playmaker, Demion Brown, played his last year in 2024. He was also the team's leading rusher just a year ago. And, I mean, that's a really tough blow. He earned himself an invite to the Raiders rookie minicamp, though. That's a tough deal to replace a playmaker like that. And so this team is going to have a lot more question marks than answers heading into the 2025 season. Can they answer a lot of those? Absolutely. But losing a guy like him at under center is a really tough piece. This is going to be a prove-it year for head coach Hud Jackson and company. The guys need to step into some new roles. 2025, he'll be year 14 for Coach Jackson at the head coach position. He also serves as their director of athletics over there for the Weevils. You don't see that, I think, very often at the Division II level, a guy that can be the head coach and also kind of the AD. It happens here or there, definitely at the smaller schools. But again, this is a lot of question marks around this team going into the fall. They have a lot of guys they've lost to graduation. Of course, I mentioned it, a lot of guys to the portal. This is a guy that's been here for the long run. He knows about the turnover of this team and how to prepare them for success in the future. Can he do it and dig himself out of what I think is a little bit of a hole right now and a little bit of a lack of talent when you lose this surplus of guys to the portal and to graduation? Only time will tell. But that's kind of the short bit on Arkansas Monticello.
Absolutely. Kobe, let's talk a little bit about Southeastern Oklahoma State. They started the year hot, finished 2024, though, with 3 straight losses to finish at 5-6. We talk a lot at Kobe about like this conference, and we're like, oh, there's those top teams, but there's also those middle of the pack teams where it's like you're a couple plays away. We just talked about it with the Wonder Boys. Like you can imagine within that locker room when you're 5-3, you're riding high, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're 5-6, and you're like, what happened? Yep. You know what I mean? It's one of those where it's like, wow, like how did we do that? 18 players enter the transfer portal. 5 players returning. That's obviously not necessarily a good thing unless they, you get the only good thing I believe that the transfer portal has is obviously people get to go and have their own opportunities, but sometimes you're able to like get necessarily like cancers off the team where it's just like, hey, you didn't buy in, we don't want you anymore. Yep. Right. So like that could have been a factor. Unsure about that, but they do bring 5 players in. So another thing, and I just think that with this conference, running the ball is a very, very big thing. DJ Brown, and as a runner, very good runner for Oklahoma State, Southeastern Oklahoma State, not the Cowboys, but Southeastern Oklahoma State.
There you go. There you go.
Yep, had to make sure. And then finally, again, I'm going to hit it on the head as well. And I think it's a very important position, obviously, defensively, because like the quarterback is the leader and proposed leader, not necessarily always the most vocal guy or anything like that. Defensively, we all know that like there's usually a linebacker that's a leader. It's just one of those positions in sports that like they're probably a leader on the team. And so when you look at Braden Winters, who's coming off a very successful season, expect him to not only continue what he did, but up his game. So absolutely, Southeastern Oklahoma State, it's one of those teams like we talked about, Kobe. You could get hot, and they started 5-3 last year. You never know what could happen.
Other side of the state, Southwestern Oklahoma State, 3-8 in 2024. 16 players at the portal. Doesn't seem like they're missing a whole lot of key contributors, quote unquote, on either side of the ball, but definitely always hurts. 16 guys in the portal. Possibly biggest blow. QB Kai Kunz, unfortunately, medically retiring following 2024 season. He was also their leading rusher by a large margin. That was only his sophomore season. So to lose a guy like Kunz after the 24 season, that's a really tough blow for this team. Seemed like he was poised to be the quarterback and the guy of the future for this offensive attack moving forward. But on the other side of the ball, Matthew Miles is another guy to be excited about. Defensive lineman coming in from USF, formerly Mississippi Valley State. You look back at that quarterback room, Chandra Galbin, hopefully pronouncing that one correctly, will likely be in the mix at quarterback heading into the fall, along with the former LSU preferred walk-on, Knox Dyson. He's transferring in, joining the squad this fall. Last year was the first season under head coach Andrew Rice. He's looking to build in 2025. He's got previous GAC experience. He was the offensive coordinator at Southern Arkansas. So you talk about Coach Roy earlier on, another guy who's got great GAC experience, has experienced success inside of this conference, is going to one of those middle tier type universities or schools inside of the conference to see if he can replicate and reproduce that, Drew.
Yeah, it's a great point, Kobe. And as we move to Southern Nazarene, a team who went 3-8 last year, but a massive upset win against Ouachita Baptist. That's a key point of what we're talking about this entire conference. You're one win away from not necessarily like making your season, but proving that you guys belong. And so not many losses to the portal. But as far as the incoming freshman class, 75 players, which people should better be wearing name tags on their first day of practice because there's no way you'd be able to name all those guys. Those are supposed to be your best friends for life. But start 2025 with a couple of tough matchups at Henderson State and then Southern Arkansas week 2. Quarterback Bryson Evans. Watch out for him, Kobe. I think he makes the offense go. Ran for 600 yards, threw for over 1,000 last year. They're losing a couple of his targets, but at the end of the day, as a quarterback, like we had talked about with previous guys in other conferences, get him the ball. Let's see what he can do. Okay. And then Carter Brock is a name to know for the Crimson Storm defense. Going into a senior season, talk about a guy who filled up the stat sheet last year, 95 tackles over a year ago, 8 TFLs. Watch out for him as well, Carter Brock.
Yeah, best quarterbacks are the ones that can elevate the guys around them, right? Not just can get the balls in the hands of their best players, so to speak. That definitely helps, but also can elevate those guys and turn them into better players in turn. But to continue on this list, Oklahoma Baptist, 2-9 a year ago in 24. They lose as many as 5 starters on defense. The former All-American, we actually talked about Scooter Baker on this show, making the move over to Valdosta State. That's a huge loss for that defensive side of the ball. You don't see almost any reported incoming transfers. It's a little bit worrisome for a team that loses some spots, and you might need a couple key guys to come in and be impact players in day one. I don't know what the depth is at those different position groups currently on the roster. I have to do a little bit more of a deep dive, but some new faces on the coaching staff as well. You got outside hires at linebacker, running back, safeties, and quarterbacks. None of which were internal promotions. These aren't GAs assuming their own role and getting their own position group. These are all guys coming in from outside hires and candidates coming into this program for the first time. That can be really good. It can be really bad. You get some new perspective, new views. Also could take a little bit of time to learn how they operate. The running back, though, EJ Moore, he should be back in the offensive backfield this season. That's a key piece for this offensive attack. He led all rushers with almost 600 yards last year, 5 touchdowns. He's 6 foot, 225 pounds out of the offensive backfield. A guy that is pretty multifaceted. Seen him split him out, catching balls out of the backfield. He's got a good frame on him. Tyler Johnson, key returning piece for this defense. 57 tackles, 5.5 TFLs in his sophomore year. Could develop into what I think could even be an all-conference caliber player. 5'11", 225, big-time piece for that defense, Drew.
Yeah, absolutely. When you are able to bring in guys like that, then and have a couple returners, you never know what could happen. Even though you went 2-9 a season ago, guess what? Nobody cares. At the end of the day, it's 0-0, first game of the year. You're 0-0. You can win the national championship just as much as anybody. You can win your conference. So just because you went 2-9 last year doesn't really mean anything. It's a new season, new day. And that's exactly what I'm getting into.
Scary, promising thing about 0-0, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Like everyone at the start of the season is like, holy shit, we can go win the whole thing.
Absolutely. And like, obviously, some teams, you're not necessarily going to bet on them with, anything like with your own currency, but like why not us, right? Everyone says that, but
yes.
So that's how I see it. And so then going into another team that went 2-9 a season ago, Northwestern Oklahoma State, per Athlink, 14 players in the portal that saw snaps last season. So, okay, what do? We're going to look to not necessarily go get a bunch of guys from the portal, but we're also going to have to eyes on the team currently step up. But one of the guys that they did go get from the portal from NAIA Bethany and Caleb Epperson, 39 tackles the season ago. He was an all-conference DB, 3 interceptions and 8 PBUs, so balls on the ground, or he's catching them as well, so that's a big deal. Also got a pair of DBs from D2 powerhouse Central Missouri, Justice Jones and Anthony Wilson. So it's like, hey, we brought in a bunch of experienced defensive backfield. So if you can figure out the pass rush or figure out the run stopping, you have experienced guys in the defensive end as far as the backfield is concerned. Great. Now, as far as offense is concerned, Brody Johnson is out. That was starting quarterback a season ago. Beck Moss, Caleb Deal, 2 guys competing for the job. And one thing that, we all know across sports, no matter if you like it or not, no matter if it's your buddy or not, iron sharpens iron, and you're going to get the best playmakers out of each other, right? Like, look at the guys in like that Oklahoma, since we're talking about Oklahoma, and I love Baker Mayfield, but like when you got guys like Kyler Murray right behind him, it's like, hey, I got to get better. You know what I mean? Because I know he can play, right? So it's that's how you get the best set of guys is from people always iron sharpens iron.
100%, man. To close that out, lose your top 3 tacklers from a year ago. That's a tough loss for any defense, especially this one, a team that has struggled in the bottom half of this conference. How do you get the leg up? For East Central, we talked about guys being in the summer and buying into that offseason program and conditioning. For a team like Northwestern, we talk about that defensive backfield. You said it. If you can figure out some of the front end, you hope the back end can hold it down, right? Can you get yourself a couple of coverage sacks when you're locking up guys down the field, giving that front 6, that front 7 some time to get to the quarterback and develop a little bit of pressure? How do you scheme around a defensive backfield in a unit like that should anchor the defense for you? It doesn't help when you lose your top 3 tacklers, though, right? Redshirt sophomore Cade Reynolds should be a guy to watch for the fall. He might have to take on a very early leadership role. That's something that, as a redshirt, a very beneficial deal. You say redshirt sophomore going into this year, 1 year of playing under his belt, but of course had that redshirt year to physically develop. So he's out there ready to play and perform like an upperclassman. He has to be. For this team, he has to step into a larger leadership role and bring some other guys along with him, Drew.
Absolutely. Like we talked about, it doesn't matter if you're a freshman going to be a sophomore going to be a junior going to be a senior. There's guys that leave, and you're now that guy that feels that he has to up his level as far as leadership. You got to step up, right? At the end of the day, coaches are looking around like, who's going to be that guy? Doesn't matter what age you are.
Hell yeah, man. Sweet. I think you killed it, brother. I appreciate you. That's the GAC heading into 2025. Let us know who your pick is to win the conference. Of course, Harding, Ouachita have certainly been teams on top in very recent history. Southern Arkansas, Henderson State teams that have been knocking on the door. Or will it be a dark horse? Will it be an underdog? Can East Central, can Arkansas Tech, can some of these other squads come up and take a leg up inside of the conference and help to maybe cannibalize a little bit and beat up on some of these other teams? Historically, it hasn't happened. But you look last year, that Southern Nazarene win over Ouachita. That was something that shook the D2 landscape. Can other teams replicate that kind of success? We shall see, my friend. Thank you for your time.
We'll see. Hey, don't forget about the Wonder Boys.
Don't forget. Hey, better not count them out. Coach Roy and company, they go have them boys right come fall, man. I'm excited about them. Tonight, we got a couple different D3 football topics to talk about heading into the 2025 season. We're going to talk about some very talented quarterbacks in just a little bit. But first, we have a big-time coaching hire in the D3 landscape, that being Hal Mumme, who is now the newest offensive coordinator and quarterback coach at Centenary College. The big-time addition for this Centenary group, Jimmy, and a name that I think in Mumme a lot of people are going to recognize from his stints all over the place. And the quote from Centenary in their release here, it says, "One of the most innovative and dynamic offensive minds in the history of college football, recognized as one of the originators of the air raid offense." His coaching tree, including the likes of the late Mike Leach, Sonny Dykes, we'll talk about in a little bit. A lot of prominent names have come from this man, his coaching tree, and the guys and the staff that he's been around. Coaching career started in 1989 at NAIA Iowa Wesleyan, so has experience, a lot of experience, will come to find out, at the smaller college football levels. From there, he spent 5 years at Valdosta State when they were still playing in Division III. Had a lot of success with the Blazers in that time span. From there, he goes on to Kentucky. That's the job that a lot of people know him from when he was with the Wildcats. From there, the XFL, the Spring League, many others, a lot of other Division III institutions in that time span as well. And this is just a big-time pickup for this squad. It's obviously a very notorious name inside of college football. When you look at some of the names that have endorsed Mumme in this change, and we talked about Sonny Dykes a little bit earlier, but you look at some of the guys, I won't read maybe all of the quotes necessarily from these releases, but right here, Sonny Dykes talks about how lucky Centenary is to have this guy. He says he has an elite ability to help players reach their potential, and obviously, he's one of the brightest minds in college football history. That is very, very high praise from a guy coaching in a very high level at TCU there. Also from the likes here from the offensive coordinator at Nebraska. How about keeping going down the line here? The head basketball coach at Ole Miss. I mean, you look at some of these connections this guy has made over the years. They're absolutely ridiculous. And one of the things that stands out about his resume, especially when it comes to D3 football, you go back to 2011. Here's the tweet, courtesy of Couch Crew here on Twitter. And you go back to this, Jimmy. This is a ridiculous story that I uncovered trying to do some more research on Mumme. This is a team, the D3 team down in Texas in McMurray. They took down a Division I FCS opponent, UT San Antonio, 24-21 in front of a crowd of almost 32,000 people at the Alamo Dome. They scored a touchdown with 19 seconds left to play, and this D3 team down in McMurray took down a Division I opponent. When was the last time you heard about something like that, dude?
This is me doing the Kermit the Frog meme when people say D3 isn't real football. It's like they're speaking out of ignorance. There are so many amazing football players and programs in Division III football that they don't fall into this category of like a scholarship player or an NIL guy, but there are just perfect example is this game right here. There's loads of talent in the Division III level, tons of it.
100%, man. And looking back at the highlights here, it's very obvious these teams were not outmatched. Of course, they went on to win this game, so I think that should be obvious in that. But they battle back and score late in the game to overcome UTSA. I can only imagine how that shook up the landscape back then. That was long before I was covering small school football. You and I both, before this was even kind of an idea, but definitely something that's worth mentioning when you talk about his history, especially the D3 football level. But another exciting piece about him joining Centenary is the SCAC. They got a new format for deciding their conference champion next season. All 6 schools will meet on November 15th in Little Rock, Arkansas for championship weekend, Jimmy. And this is a really neat concept and idea. It's at War Memorial Stadium, and it's an exciting day. They say features 3 games. The number 5 versus the number 6 seed, the number 3 versus the 4 seed, and then the top 2 seeds playing each other all on the same day. That is very, very unique. I don't think I've heard of anything like that before. It certainly will be a trailblazing type of deal for the SCAC, my friend.
Certainly sounds that way.
That's a pretty sweet deal. So, once again, Hal Mumme going over to Centenary College as their offensive coordinator should be, that's definitely big-time news in the D3 football landscape. But let's talk about some quarterbacks at the D3 football level you absolutely need to know about heading into 2025. These are guys that obviously fill up the stat books, but also have the traits and the teams behind them to go and make a run, and that teams that you probably should tune into on any given Saturday to see these guys and, of course, their talented teammates go and perform. Jimmy, start us off with a little bit of a WIAC flair, my friend.
So I've seen this kid play up front and center. I've seen this kid's an absolute dog. Caleb Blaha, quarterback, River Falls, missed most of last season with a hamstring injury. Very much changed the trajectory of River Falls season, although they had some talented quarterbacks that stepped in there and did a really good job. This kid already has the school record for yards accounted for, and he has a year left.
Yeah.
Is that good?
I think that's got to be up there. Yeah, that's got to be pretty decent.
Yeah, he's going to separate himself in those record books in a big way this year. I mean, I have all the respect in the world for this kid's game. He is certainly a Gallardi candidate early on here. A true dual threat quarterback, elite scramble drill abilities. He's great on third down, great in the red zone, and he is just a problem to tackle. He could run through you, he could juke you. Like, this kid is a dog, straight up. He's a dog.
100%, dude.
Yeah.
Tough as nails, too. You talk about he's the last guy you would have expected to leave with injury, a dude that totes the rock a lot for that River Falls offense. And when we're down there at River Falls, talking with Coach Walker and company down there, they really felt and believed they had a team to contend for a national championship in 2024, especially when Blaha was under center for this squad. They have a ton of confidence in their other playmakers on both sides of the ball in all 3 phases. That's, obviously. But when this guy's under center, this is a different team. So when you say it changed the trajectory of this program, when he is back under center, this is very much a team that can contend to win the conference and go and win the national championship. That's how they felt. That's how strongly they felt about this guy and this team last year. Can they keep that going into 2025? That's the question, and especially in front of a conference that is the toughest at this level and that cannibalizes itself on a very, very regular basis, as you have come to find out, Jimmy. But as we go down the list, talking about another guy that certainly you need to keep an eye on heading into 2025, let's go to Bethel. Let's talk about Cooper Drews. He's got the single-season passing touchdown record holder already for the Royals. This is a guy that filled up the stat book inside of 2024, almost 4,000 yards, 43 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. Pretty good ratio right there. 74% completion percentage on the year, crunching some of the numbers there. He's got a ton of different records already inside of Bethel, and I think a good stat to kind of encompass him, he's the 7th highest passing leader out of all divisions of football coming back this season. That's D1, D2, D3, and NAIA. He is top 10 in the country for returning production heading into this season. Now, that should illustrate the level at which he's been able to perform in the last couple of years. And something about him that is, I think, kind of a fun deal as well, Jimmy. He's got his own podcast They call it the Ball Knowledge Podcast. That's got to be one of the cooler things that I uncovered about Cooper when doing a little bit of research. The Ball Knowledge Podcast with Cooper Drews. Definitely shout out to him. Definitely go tune in and check out the pod. But this is a guy that's been able to do it on and off the field. You look at the accolades he's been able to accomplish with a very, very talented Bethel squad around him. I will add, you look at what the defense was able to do last year. They got more pressure on the quarterback than anyone in Division III football. You look down this list of accolades right here. Nationally, top 10 ranked in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different categories. Top 5, rather. Excuse me. He is amongst the best of the best at his position at any level in college football right now, and is a guy that, he's 6'5", 215 pounds. Certainly not a frame or a scale that you associate with the prototypical Division III quarterback. This is a guy that demands a lot of attention from a defensive coordinator standpoint, a calm pocket presence, not a guy to rush a throw or make the same mistake twice. A lot of exciting things coming for Cooper Drews in 2025, my friend.
Yeah, certainly. And another kid who has a lot of exciting things ahead of him is Adam Mumme, quarterback of University of Wisconsin Stout, aka University of Wisconsin Trout, as we saw earlier this morning.
That was an all-time blunder. That was bad.
Shout out to Pat Corcoran, by the way. He's got an agent, so shout out to Pat. But anyway, Adam Mumme, I'm going to take a lot of heat for this because I went to Stout. Bias this, bias that. I want you to turn on the film and watch Adam Mumme play football before you call me biased for this. Started all 11 games last year, team captain, led the WAC in passing yards per game. Stout was a perfect 27 for 27 in the red zone last season, Kobe.
Wow.
27 for 27 in the red zone, whether that's field goals, touchdowns, whatever it is. And that doesn't happen without an elite quarterback. And Adam Mumme certainly falls under the category of elite quarterback, being that he was also the first 3,000 passer at Stout since 1998 last season. And he ran for 542 yards last year, too. So he's a dual threat quarterback. And also shout out to the All-American kicker, Luke Cool. Helping us with that red zone percentage as well. Shout out to Coolio on that one.
100%. You talked about it, man. 3,000 passing yards. You would imagine a guy like that with that number of accolades and fills a stat book like that. What did he do the year prior, right? You think that maybe he started to get his feet wet and was, kind of a 1,000 or 2,000 yard passer. Last year, he had, not last year, I should say 2 years ago, in 2023, only 13 pass attempts for him. That jump from playing and competing in 9 games, sure, but going from 13 pass attempts to 360 plus a year later, and not just airmailing this thing. We're talking about a very, very surgically accurate quarterback, over 3,000 yards, 25 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions throughout the entire course of the season. That jump from year to year is unparalleled. There's no one in the country that makes a jump like that outside of, I'm assuming, Mumme. This is a guy that is certainly set himself apart. Now, what's even scarier, what does he do now? What does he do? Why does he make that jump from 24 to 25 and become even better? If that was the jump from almost no production to mass volume, what does he look like now with a full season of starting under his belt, dude?
There is no ceiling for Adam Mumme. There's no ceiling. That's all I really have to say about this kid. I mean, 2 years ago, he was like our Taysom Hill or whatever. He'd line up in –
okay.
He'd be like a running back, receiver, like whatever it was. You just had to get the kid the ball. I mean, because we had Mitch Wechter, total stud quarterback, and it was going to be hard for Mumme to take snaps when we had this kid under center. But, I mean, you just got to get the ball in his hands, and good things are going to happen. That's all it really is.
100%, man. That's a guy, and you look at already a couple guys out of the WIAC, and we're talking about them for good reason, right? This isn't just because we like the conference. These are guys that are going to contend at the national level as some of the best in the business, but a guy will get out of that conference in Wisconsin. Let's talk about Josh Ehrlich, the guy from Susquehanna who's been under center for them, nicknamed JT. This is a guy that a lot of people have been introduced to, whether they like it or not, on the national level because of the things he's been able to do with the Riverhawks. You talk about their success recently, making it to the semifinals last year. He leads a thrilling NCAA playoff tournament run, the comeback win over Hobart, the clinching victory against St. John's, a 4th and goal, quarterback keeper, comes up clutch in all of these big-time moments, scores again in the Elite Eight, sends Riverhawks to their first Final Four since 1991. This has been the catalyst for the Riverhawk offense. And another team, we talk about the squads like Cortland, like Grove City, these quote-unquote feel-good stories that have turned that narrative into something more. Susquehanna very much in the mix right there, very much in part due to this guy under center. He's taken this quote-unquote feel-good story and turned them into a national contender. Now, he hasn't done that single-handedly. He's got a great supporting cast around him, but the impact that he makes in between those white lines and the way he's able to thread dots like that down the sideline. Look at the poise and the calm, the ability to scramble as the play develops. He's getting down the field. He's going to do it with his own 2 legs. He is not shy about it, Jimmy. This is a guy that is as competitive as they come. The son of Maryland's former governor. Downtime says he's equally competitive in video games and spike ball. Way too into spike ball even, Jimmy. But this is a guy that has been very fun to watch, and as someone who was admittedly not hip to this Susquehanna team even just 1 or 2 years ago, he has put me and the rest of the country on notice.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not notice the kid? Like you said, it's just like you have no option other than to notice him.
Correct. He forces you to turn the TV on and watch this guy play because they refuse to lose, and a big part of it because of him.
Yeah, certainly. And then another kid that's kind of like that. I mean, you could say a lot about what he does on the field, but his philanthropic efforts off the field. Carter St. John, quarterback for Alma. The founder of Quarterback versus Cancer, friend of the pod, and he is a perfect example of why height is overrated. He only stands at about 5'10", but he does complete 65% of his passes with 31 touchdowns last year, also with over 400 yards rushing on the ground last year and 5 touchdowns. He's got a couple more stats for you here. He's already the school passing touchdowns leader. He's second in yards, and he's second in passes completed. So that leads me to believe he's going to break all of the records this season, with another season to go, obviously. So
absolutely, yes. Everything, all the records are shaken right now because they know that they're not going to last, right? And of course, any excuse I get to pull this bad boy
baby.
Out. This beautiful lid.
Give me the bagpipes.
Any excuse.
Give me the bagpipes. Give me the kilts. Give me the little hat. Everything. I want everything. I'm going to turn into a Scot for game day. Like, I will be indistinguishable from someone from Scotland. You won't be able to tell the difference. I'll have the long socks. I'll have the tap dancing shoes, the whole get up, the whole 9 yards, Kobe. Everything. I am so locked in for this, dude. The helmet stays on.
We definitely need to get on site for an Alma game this fall. That certainly will be in the works. It's one of the teams we love covering. But Carter St. John, like you talked about, again, a feel-good story of a guy who has done these things off the field. It's one thing if you just do these things off the field. I don't want to say just to downplay any of it. It's one thing if you do these things off the field and are a great person and a great human. It's another if you can take that and combine being an absolute dog and competitor in between the white lines. You talked about it. A guy who, hard over height, this is the prototypical D3 quarterback, a guy who has balled out at every level of football he's been at. He's taken that winning to the next level at Alma, playing some tough competition inside of the MIAA, but it's translated into the playoffs. You look at the runs these Alma teams have made. The Mount Union win, of course, stands out in the national tournament. This is a guy that is so used to overcoming every set of odds or obstacles in front of him set by whether it's media pundits like us or people on the outside from other teams. He does not care for your opinion. He goes out, he performs under a guy like Coach Couch. That's all you can really ask for at your quarterback spot, man.
Yeah. My dad talks about this a lot. He's a foxhole guy. He's a guy you want to go to war with. He's your typical, he's your foxhole guy. Chris St. John is a foxhole guy.
I love that, dude. Yep. Let's keep this thing going. Closing it out on our topic for 2025 quarterbacks to watch at the Division III level. Let's go over to Center College, Jimmy. Jack Goman from Center College stepping up in the big games, I think, is something you need to know about this guy. What jumps off the page right away, some of the statistics from last year for a guy that, once again, I might have not been hip to this guy and this team. When you look at him just on the roster, 6'4", 195 pounds. This is not typically a frame that ends up at the Division III level. Someone who commands the pocket presence and those type of deal. The statistics from a year ago, they speak for themselves. Another 3,000 plus yardage passer. He led the conference in passing offense a year ago. And look at the ratio, 30 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. Maybe not quite as surgical as some of the other guys that we talk about on this list, but volume, my friend, volume. 428 passing attempts a year ago. This is a guy they heavily rely on, that Center College offense. And what really stuck out to me about Jack was that he stepped up in the big games. And I go back to their playoff game just a year ago. They go down to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and this game, Jimmy, was 25 degrees in November last year. from a quarterback perspective, playing in a 25-degree football game, Fahrenheit, for all you non-Americans. I don't know why you'd be listening, but
hey, yeah, whoa. We welcome all listeners.
Okay. A 25-degree playoff game, Jimmy, how easy would it be to say, it's 25 degrees, let's just hand the rock off and hope, and then we'll try and trick them with a pass here or there, right? For an offensive coordinator to trust your guy in frigid, below freezing temperatures to be able to go out there and deal the rock, he absolutely went out there and did that. The first drive, he completes 4 straight passes, but then an interception keeps Center College from scoring. That could shake a quarterback's confidence, especially in the playoffs on a big stage that can rattle you for the rest of the contest. Not what happened with Jack. This is, to me, the biggest thing that stands out. He doesn't let that shake him. He goes on to finish 38 of 63 with 402 yards and a touchdown. 63 passing attempts. And the game was 25 degrees. He had to be Teddy Two-Gloving it out there. I mean, how else could you even accomplish that?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he's doing like some Wim Hof like breathing techniques, and he's like getting ready for the cold. You know what I'm saying? Like he's like in his room, he's like he's getting his central nervous system regulated to balance the cold and the heat. Like this guy he's doing the things necessary off the field. I think
whatever his training regiment is, we need it, because you talk about that volume, 63 passing attempts when your game and your season is on the line in a temperature that does not warrant that type of offense, the offensive MVP, as you can see it there. And another thing that's very encouraging about Jack, when you go back through and you look at the strides that he's made every season. In 2022, he played in only 3 games. He had 12 pass attempts for 76 yards. Not much to say for it. In 2023, coming in as kind of the true guy under center, 10 games played, 260 passing attempts, 1,800 yards, 16 touchdowns. Now we're talking about some real volume. We're talking about some statistics that are going to put you on the upper levels of your respective conference. Then you make that jump to last year. I talked about it, over 3,000 yards. Again, when you talk about a guy that has made those strides year in and year out, it's dangerous and it's scary for opponents to think, what the hell is he going to do this fall? With all that experience under his belt, with some weapons coming back at center, what can he accomplish? What can this team accomplish, inside of and outside of the conference with a guy like this under center? I think that's a pretty good way of closing out the conversation, my friend.
Yep.
And a couple guys I should also mention, there were a couple guys on this list that would have probably been on this list that are departing from D3 football, and I do think it's still worth shouting these guys out because of the season that they've had in the past. One of them being the quarterback, Destin Chance, the man who is from Illinois College, lit up the scene there with the Blue Boys. He's going over to NAIA Bethel University, where his brother is actually going to be doing the play calling over there, Drew Chance. That is an incredible dynamic, an incredible duo that we will absolutely be watching moving forward. And then another one that comes to mind right away, a guy who we've had the pleasure of having on the program not too recently, Ryan Blair, the quarterback from Whitworth, is going up, making the move to Division II, University of Mary inside of the Northern Sun Athletic Conference as a grad transfer, had 37 touchdowns and led the Pirates to the playoffs just a year ago, I do believe. So that's a couple of guys that probably would have been on this list otherwise, Jim.
Yeah, certainly. Then there's a couple WIAC quarterbacks that I could have put on there, but I don't want to have too much WIAC bias. So,
Yeah. Hey, with that being said, too, like there are a ton of other quarterbacks that could absolutely be included in this list. We just didn't have all night to talk about these guys. I wish we did. And this certainly doesn't mean that this will be the last time we talk about this stuff, right? This is just trying to give you some big-time names. And for people who maybe are more casual fans of the sport, these are some names they can maybe latch onto and gives them a reason to tune into football on Saturdays in the fall. So that's all we're kind of trying to accomplish.
And these were all in no order, by the way. These weren't like ranked 1 through 6. This was not like, the first guy we talked about is the best quarterback. No. It was not a list. It was not like a ranking. We were just talking about certain guys.
Thank you for the disclaimer. That asterisk was much needed.
Because Adam Mullen would not have been the third person I talked about. If that was the case.
That's awesome. That was great, Jimmy. That was a lot of fun, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Cobb.
Closing out the episode with some NAIA football news. And first up, we've got a sprint football team making the transition to a fully fledged NAIA football team. And for those of you not familiar, sprint football is a different version or iteration of football, if you will, played with very similar rules, same field size, different things. the biggest thing that differentiates that from the typical NCAA or NAIA football varsity sport is a weight limit. Every player on the field has to be 178 pounds or less. And while this isn't an NCAA sport, this is a varsity sport at a lot of different colleges and universities. There's a very storied history at Ivy League schools, military institutions. Certainly feels to be growing in popularity as the sport continues to evolve. And the team that we're talking about tonight, St. Mary of the Woods, the Pomeroys, they are going to be an MSFA member beginning in 2026. The current sprint football program will join the NAIA ranks starting next year. They will still compete in sprint football this fall. Now, this is huge news for the MSFA, because if you've been following the conference recently, you look at what's happened inside of the conference. The recent closure of Siena Heights was a massive, massive loss for this football conference. And you look back even further, last year was the last season that Concordia Ann Arbor fielded a football team. So now in 2 years, you're losing 2 football playing member institutions. How do you rebound from that? For them, they got creative. They go out and they add St. Mary's of the Woods, which is a very interesting pickup. Now, with that being said, I wonder how long a move like this may or may not have been on their radar. Was this something they had been thinking about for an extended period of time, or did the closure of Concordia Ann Arbor and now Siena Heights spur them into action and make them go out and be very proactive about acquiring another member for this conference? This conference is no joke either. I think that's something very important, is that the Pomeroys are not coming into some cakewalk. The MSFA has produced 9 NAIA national champions, including Marion, St. Xavier, St. Francis, and Indiana, with 6 national titles since 2011. 6 titles alone since 2011 for this conference. Absolute gauntlet of teams. And so it'll be a very interesting transition for SMWC to come up and play in the NAIA ranks. Of course, the challenges would be maybe not so much at the skill positions, but you think that weight limit of 178 pounds. How many people do you keep from that current roster to actually go through and complete this transition into the NAIA ranks? That's going to be a very interesting piece for me. How many of those guys, because they go and sign up for sprint football, maybe they weren't built to go and play NAIA or otherwise, how many of them accept that challenge and try and put on some of that weight to compete with the, I guess, more physically imposing teams you'll typically find at the NAIA level, and especially inside of a conference like this? That'll be a very interesting deal. But my last piece of news on the NAIA side, we announced it on our social media earlier if you saw it, but the NAIA National Championship game is moving in 2025. It'll be played at this venue, Crowley ISD, multi-purpose stadium. They've been selected as the 2025 NAIA Football Championship game site. And what makes that interesting is kind of a couple of things. One, any venue change for a national championship is always going to be kind of newsworthy, I think, in my opinion. But what really separates this is the fact that a current NAIA team actually plays out of this stadium. Texas Wesleyan, a team we've highlighted a few times on this show, just had their quarterback on the program. That's an interesting deal. Texas Wesleyan currently plays all of their games out of Crowley ISD. And for a team that very, very legitimately could be in the national title conversation this year, could you imagine playing a national championship on their home field? I think the analogy and the conversation should always shift back to the NFL of, yeah, they have Super Bowl games at NFL stadiums every year. How often does the home team actually play there? Technically, do you have a 1 in 32 chance? I don't know how the math would really work out. Could you imagine a Texas Wesleyan Rams team that gets to play on their home field for a national championship? That'd be a very, very cool deal. Sooner Athletic Conference maybe taking the cake there. This was the graphic that we shared earlier in the week with the nice NAIA National Championship trophy. Now, this stadium is down in Fort Worth, Texas. The game will be played in December on the 20th of this season. A couple stats about the actual stadium. It opened in 2022 in Fort Worth. It seats around 8,000 fans. And like I talked about, it's home of Texas Wesleyan right now, and it will host the championship this season. A couple good shots of the stadium there. Of course, then the question leads us to, who the hell's going to play in it? Who's going to play in the national championship? And of course, we have quite a few time before we even get to really talk about that, but it's one of those always like really fun conversations to have in the off season. But that's the big news from the NAIA side of things. Thank you all, if you've made it this far, for sticking through the majority of the podcast. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Excited for you to see what we have to offer you guys this fall 2025 season.